For the benefit of you people at other times and other places, again, I'll make a comment on this tape. I am still, to a degree, taking into consideration where I'm taping this and at the particular time that there are some new people, and there are people in other cities around the planet now doing the same thing. So some of what I'm saying, even though I've increased the speed at which I would have normally started it some years ago, I'm still responding to what are fairly basic interests and responses of newer people here. So for you people in faraway times and faraway places, that's what's going on. Another little drawing. How about this? I don't guess anyone's ever seen because I've never drawn it. Other than the nervous system, how about, I want to give you, everybody remembers that of me drawing my line level consciousness. There is another. Everybody got me? There is another one that no one's ever heard of. It's gut level consciousness. And I could draw it out in several manners, but I think you will hear what I'm getting at some tonight because it's connected with some of the favors, it's connected with some of the things I've told you that you've got to abandon. It's a waste of time, things that are not appropriate, except to an ordinary person. Now, one of the things I want to start out mentioning is being defensive. Now, this is talked about back in the city, in the fields of psychology and et cetera, and I'm, of course, talking about it at another angle, but instead of me making up a strange word, I'm just going to use defensive to start with. Specifically to the newer people involved with this, are any of you aware of how defensive many of you still are? The questions you write, and the things you say, and the look on your face. Defensive. Defensive. Let me tell you something. You should not ever do anything, you should not believe anything that you've got to defend. And there's no exception to that. That includes this. But right now you're in no position to do that, and that's not really your problem. But think back, whatever right now in your life, and I don't mean just anything that you've written to me about or anything that you have sent to me in your facial expression. I mean anything in your life, your family, your job, the way you look, your political beliefs. Think about it a second. How much of that do you feel the need to defend? Before you let ordinary voices say, well, I don't go around defending it. How about this? Because here it is. How much of it do you have the need to defend? If I started pacing the floor up here and stomping my feet and talking about the goddamn Catholics, and it turns out you're Catholic, and you feel defensive about it, that's it. You can't do that. Don't you understand that something is wrong? Now, not in the city. In the city, that's just the way things are supposed to be. It's the same kind of irritations, it's the same kind of conflict, of pro and con, everything. But if you feel any need to defend, whether it's just to yourself, maybe you're wired up that you're the sort that would never speak out and say anything, but internally you resist it. You feel the need to defend, well, they shouldn't talk like that because I'm, in fact, Irish myself. My grandmother was German. You should not do anything, you should not believe anything, and you ultimately should not be anything that you've got to defend. Now, to begin with, if you belong in the Revolutionary Army, this is not as bad as it sounds, it's even worse. You're going to come to a very soon recognition, I'll go ahead and point out to you, there is nobody on this planet, as a rule, that's in any position to judge you. You really have no peers, and that does not mean that people involved with this are better. I tell you one more time, in a sense, you're worse off than everybody else. You're not superior, you're not right and everybody else wrong. I'm not right and the rest of the world wrong, it's just the opposite. They outnumber me, so they got to be right. That's not a cop-out, that's a fact. They are right. This is wrong. So, when I tell you that you've got no peers, I don't mean it in an ordinary sense. But there is nobody that can understand what's going on with this except somebody that's involved with it. And therefore, you cannot defend it. But before you even get to that point, anything that you do now that you've got to defend, you should abandon it like it was plague-ridden. Anything that you believe, I don't care what it is. I don't care what it is, whether it's still some lingering over a faith you have in some religion, some philosophical idea. If anybody, I don't mean just me now, when I talked about me pacing the floor and cursing the Pope, anybody in life, the TV, a newspaper that you read that somebody made some snide remark or somebody questioned the validity of the Hindu faith, and something in you, because of the books you read, because of the months or years you spent in some commune. I always confuse the two. If anything in you resists, all you're doing is identifying yourself as being common. You're back at line level consciousness, and you're getting very close to gut level consciousness. In other words, as opposed to actually doing anything out of the ordinary, you're doing nothing. You might as well be curled up in that fetal conscious position. If you understand anything, for me to bring this down to an impossible, but I'll verbalize it, quantitative level, and call that we could say that there is a something that you understand. That finally you begin to understand something, not talk about something, and that the difference between thinking about reality and reality itself in some way has merged in you, and you have now become conscious of it in a place above line level consciousness. In other words, you understand something, whatever the hell that means, something extraordinary, that you suddenly understand it. I guarantee you this, one of my few guarantees, I guarantee you this, when you understand something, the whole world, the Pope, rabbis, your mother, people down the street, whoever your hero, Pete Rose, Mick Jagger, they can all come out, and whatever it is that you now understand, they can speak of it, and them all go, pooh! Them all laugh at it and ridicule it. And you know how much it'll bother you? I don't mean some sort of fake. I don't mean trying to play like, well, I don't care. It'll be the wind in the bushes. It'll be raindrops falling on my head. Nothing. But now ask yourself, if you've got this ability, what do you believe now, what do you accept as being serious in life that is absolutely immune to criticism? I'll answer it for you. Nothing. It is an absolute rule if you understand something properly. If you understand something, you have no need to defend it. There's no struggle. You don't debate whether I should defend it. If you understand it and somebody else criticizes, I don't care who it is, then you understand this. You understand that they do not understand it. Or else they wouldn't attack it. They wouldn't laugh at it. They wouldn't say anything about it. So what are you going to do? You're going to teach turtles not to be slow? You're going to tell skunks not to stink? And if you're that hard up for a hobby, but the real reason I bring this up right now is this is a point at which you can make some new judgment as to what's going on. Because I repeat again, I want you to understand, I don't just talk as fast as I can get talking sometimes, and as complex as I can get. I know exactly what I'm saying. So at least you think that I misspoke, or that I didn't mean exactly what I said. I mean exactly what I say, and I push words to their limit, but I mean exactly what I say. That you should not be doing anything, which is hard, but you should not be even believing, which seems to be easier. You should not believe in, you should have no faith in anything that you have got to defend, that you feel the need to defend. Twist it back a little bit if that's not plain enough. If there's anything now that you have any faith in, astrology, religion, anything, including this. As I said, that's not going to make much sense until a few more days down the road. But if there's anything Your firm belief, no matter what I seem to have been saying for the last few nights, but your belief that love is the answer. And whatever that means to you, that really love is the answer. And if me or somebody else can holler, boy, love is not what it's cracked up to be, or humanity is nuts talking about love, they're a bunch of maniacs. Love is simply a smokescreen that a would-be tyrant begins to wave in front of the damn dumb people. That Marx was wrong. It's not religion. It's the idea of love drugs people. And as soon as you hear this, inside of you, inside of your little heart, you begin to defend that position. I want you to understand that you are defending nothing. You are defending a puff of smoke. You have absolutely no understanding of it, or you would not be offended by it. You would not resist it. If you understand something, the rest of the world, ordinary people, can apparently step on it, laugh at it, kick it, turn their back on it, spit on it, and it's irrelevant. You don't have to struggle not to be angry about it. Those of you who are really good, you might take some of the stories that you probably had some faith in all these years and thought you understood from some of the religions and mystery tales and et cetera that sound like people defending themselves against the crowd, against the state and et cetera, and try and turn it internally. Somebody who understands something, including themselves, they got no defense because they're not subject to be attacked just because an ordinary person can come up and say, hey, I've heard about you and I don't like you. I've heard about some of your ideas. Didn't you say such and such, or didn't you write this book, or one time didn't you tell a group of people so and so? If so, I want to tell you, you're nuts. There is no real word for it. The best I can tell you is irrelevant. It's not that you have to struggle not to get mad. It's not that you tell yourself, well, poor old people, they're just not as smart as me. That's not it. They're smart as you. Always remember, if they're in the majority, in a sense, they're smarter than you. But if you understand something, you also understand why no one else sees it. You got no business being in the defense business. Forget about getting out and trying to pick at Rockwell and Boeing and any of you who were pacifists in your spare time before this. Don't worry about those kind of defense contractors. It's you. You got to get out of the defense business. Anything that you've got that you feel must be defended is not worth defending. It absolutely is not. Try and remember that until it begins to sink in. How much of what you do, how much of what you think is the easiest place apparently for you to start. How much of what you think, ideas you hold dear, beliefs, that are so righteous, that are so correct, that you have got to feel offended. You have got to feel defensive when you hear some dunderhead attack them. When you hear some fool of some other religion, some other race, some other nationality, just an ignoramus, to attack them, even if you don't say anything, you are certainly within your rights to internally feel what? Offended, defensive. You are wrong. You should hear some of that right now when I tell you that you should smell, once I point out, something fishy, just to put it crudely, but you should smell that something is curious of things that I have just always believed, with no analyzation, no investigation, such as love conquers all, or whatever, or God is good, or God's real name is Larry. Whatever just seems to you to be self-evident, and yet you hear somebody attack it, somebody laugh at it, make fun of it, deny it, and you feel like that. You don't find that curious at all? Well, you should. I'm around the edges of 4 or 5 things that I've already brought up the last few nights, and see if you can catch me when we pull them all together at the gut buster. I pointed out to you last time we met that if you ever go into business of something you enjoyed, that the business, the stuff, records, books, just becomes goods, becomes merchandise. Let me take another side swipe at that and see if I can make you see how plain this is. If you've got something now that seems to be a questionable passion, I'm saying from your viewpoint, I don't care right now. Let us say if there's something that you seem to have almost a idée fixe about. How about automobiles? To start off with a very crude and chrome and physical example. I can tell you one sure way to get over it. Go in the automobile business. That is a fact, I guarantee it. That's 2 guarantees in one night. I guarantee you. Or if you were the type, if you did in fact almost have a compulsion about buying books, I'll tell you how to get over it, is go open a bookstore. And the stuff will become junk. It will become stuff. You can't help it. It will become almost irrelevant. It's just stuff to buy and sell. Now, what if you went in the self business? What if you went in the you business? That is what I was talking about around the edges last time. What if you undertook you as a business, just you as you seem to be now? And I'll tell you, if you could once find a handle, if you can once find the crack of how to start this, which is, of course, what I've been talking about, what seems to be you becomes stuff. Just stuff. But I want you to understand, those of you that's never been through this, but a crowd this big, some of you should have had something approaching a real experience of what I'm talking about going into business. There's something you could love. I started to say clothes, but then I'm afraid that I shouldn't do that. That gets iffy. I don't care to go into that right now. But if there is something that you just absolutely loved, like books, it just was almost a habit, it was almost an addiction. I'm telling you that if you went in the business and you could not help it, and it'll happen before you know it, and it'll happen very quickly, your whole attitude changes toward books. That you're in the business, you're going in there 6 days a week, opening that shop, ordering books, paying one price, marking them up, selling them for another, people looking at books, people discussing the price, people bringing back books. Your attitude toward books is not even comparable to what it was before you went in the business. It's not that you don't like books anymore, but it's just stuff. I'm being charitable about it. It's just stuff. An absolute fact. Think about the possibilities in the way in which you now find yourself to be immured of you. The ways in which you find yourself to be negatively immured by you. The way in which you find yourself passionately attached to you. Whether for apparent good or ill. That is, whether you apparently like you by and large, or if you apparently do not like you. And that sounds far removed from what many of you, if not all of you, and everybody thinks about what some kind of self-improvement, what some kind of course of action that would make a drastic change in me would be. It does take a kind of proper anxiousness to change, but there's a difference between that and a revolutionary sense of being anxious to change and being, in the city sense, desperate. And being desperate is what everybody is, to varying degrees. Some people don't even appear to be desperate. But the whole discomfort about being alive in the city sense is if there's going to be any change, it's got to be real fast, it's got to be real drastic, and I know what it should be. That's being desperate. And the only reason that the possibility of desperate change exists is that it's not possible for it to happen. Because you can only think about it. It is part of what keeps things off balance. It is part of what keeps things open-ended so that life can grow through people. See if you can find any connection between this. I've already had several questions from you newer people regarding your profession. Tell me what you're doing, and several people have gone into some detail, tell me what you're currently doing, and then wanting to know exactly what I have to say about it. Those of you who wrote that, and those of you now hearing me say it, do you understand that you're already being defensive before the fact? Now, you may have thought that I'd already kicked around your profession somewhere along the way. But still, you're asking. What I want you to hear is, and remember, this is not psychological games we're playing. It's at a quite physical, quite cellular level. But do you hear that people are already asking me, this is just one example, profession, and they're defending themselves in front? Think about it. You might also think there have been so-called religions, philosophical systems, etc., that had as a part of them a rejoinder that one should be engaged in proper work, that one should have a decent profession, that sort of thing. You should not be doing anything that you've got to defend. Now, to speed all this up, let me jump what could be weeks or months in advance and refine some of it. You've got to try and start dealing now with this kind of coeval, different time zone reality, that like you're staying in the midst of a cycloramic painting and there is no beginning and end to this. And so what apparently could be contraries in life are going on. That is, that life has people doing things that the people, not just you, but that the people find to be less than satisfying. And in some cases they find it to be highly suspect. Now, I'm not just picking on any profession, but attorneys constantly are having seminars. Articles are written. Well, physicians too is beginning to hit them, but attorneys constantly. Somebody already heard 2 or 3 little laughs that you might know that attorneys and their books out. There are courses going on that attorneys take about how to improve the public's image of us as a profession. Because they constantly, I assume you read the paper enough, that somebody's always running a poll trying to get the public's attitude toward professions, and attorneys for the last several decades always fall either right before or right after used car salesmen. But that is nothing new. And right next to them somewhere are bankers. Always, throughout history, it's nothing new. As long as there's been laws, the public in general, a large segment of the public, have hated attorneys. As long as people, humanity, to look at it very crudely, in a physical sense of evolution, as soon as people went from looking after themselves with agriculture, that is, as soon as there was a form of commerce, people immediately hated those dealing in money. Those apparently dealing in commerce, and you could look at it from this way, not psychological, but you could look at it as a varying degrees of those who apparently actually produce something, such as somebody growing food, or nowadays somebody actually getting down, if it was possible, one man putting together a car from scratch, or building a house by himself. And then those apparently are not actually producing, they're just moving stuff around. Bankers, attorneys. But, now here's what notice. Now watch yourself, you and your people, this is not starting out, this is not an attack, nor is it a defense of some profession. But you need to see that life needs bankers and attorneys. Regardless of what you might say, they need them or they wouldn't be here. But simultaneously, other large parts of life's body goes, Jesus would be better off if we take all the attorneys and put them in a rowboat and send them out and hope it sinks. That is the kind of thing that you have got to try and have. You can't hold right now a real consciousness of it, but to trying to remind yourself that this is going on, and neither position is singularly correct or incorrect. So back to the question about profession. In the city sense, at line level consciousness, what a person is doing is irrelevant. If you're a banker, an attorney, a minister, an astrologer, a soothsayer, a used car salesman, in the city sense, it's irrelevant. If there is a demand for your profession, whatever it is. If you're making a living at it, then life needs it. If you're the only one on the planet making a living right now at it, at least life needed that, which shows that some segment of life's body needed whatever it is that you're doing. But now if you're going to try and pursue this kind of revolutionary, unnatural activity, you have got to be aware of the fact of how satisfying or how unsatisfying seems to be your profession to you. How much of it do you have to defend? Does it apparently give you any satisfaction whatsoever? And I don't mean that you have to answer this right tonight, because you couldn't. Well, you wouldn't want to. Some of you may already know the answer. Some of you, as soon as I start getting in areas such as this, some of you are going to have the feeling, if you keep your wits about you, that you know the answer, such as this one, let's say. That what I'm doing, I don't like, I never have liked, and Jesus, I wish somebody'd give me the least excuse to get out of this. But I wish that some way you would magically be able to turn on me or say, who in here is actually a banker? And when I raise my hand, you're going to say, stop it. Good grief. You know. It's worse than drinking, stop it. Or whatever profession. But I want to tell you, the more, one other little wider aspect of this, the more you are in the heart of the city, that is, the more you are in the midst of life's mechanical avant-garde. That was pretty. You're here. This is still, for all intents and purposes, right here in the United States, we are still the avant-garde of life's mechanical development. So you fit into that wider scheme. But I was going to say, the more you are there, the more you are in those circumstances, the more likely it is that way down at a cellular level, remember, the past is still alive. The past is alive in you. The past is, in one sense, your red circuit, and it's still alive. But the more you are in the doors of civilization, the more likely it is that whatever you're doing as a profession is going to be less than satisfying. That's not because civilization's wrong. It's not because life is going downhill and we're all going to hell and everything's all broken. No, 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 no. It's simply the way it is. It's like life's body through man is so elastic that it can not only live in 4 or 5 dimensions that you can't see, that's right here in the front of you, but also, as I've been pointing out, they can stretch in one direction. Like life holler, well, I need a whole bunch of bankers. I need X hundreds of thousands of bankers, and it gets them. And then life, apparently, just observe it, comes through another equal size group or more that hollers, the hell with bankers. I hate bankers. Let's do away with bankers. So it has people, the more that they are up in the yellow circuit centered areas, the more it has them engaged with professions that seem to be less than totally satisfying. But now this is true in almost any field in the world, not just your profession. There's one reason that the past always seems to be superior to ordinary people. They believe it. They're not dumb. It's just the way life is. And the older you get, if you stay at city level, if you stay at the temple of the city, the older you get, the more obvious, the more undeniable is things devolving. The better was the past. You need to face up to the fact, unless, I'm not saying that there's none of you in here that are fairly well satisfied with your profession. If so, bravo, bravo, bravo. You are in the minority. But to be aware that you have less than full joy and admiration for your profession is the norm. But if it goes too far, then you are going to eventually, not because I tell you, I can't foresee me, I never have told anybody to get out of any profession if you're worried about that. You know, even if you're a banker or an attorney, you know, Jesus, if you can stand it, I can stand it. Just don't expect to bring up the subject and me to find any interest and want to discuss the matters with you. Now back to gut level consciousness. Many ways I could get into this, and I may give you different ones at some other time. I could draw the line where I drew it here. I didn't draw him a nice big stomach. But I could have drawn it right here and say from the head up. But I was really going to drag it in and let it be at least from the diaphragm down, from the lungs down. I could also take, if you recall, whether this shows up on tape or not, but of me drawing the general representative areas of my red, blue, and yellow circuitries, which they're not laid out that simplistically, but they have, as witnessed by all the strange beliefs that humanity has carried in the tales, they do, as it were, have sort of a center, sort of a seat of government. But they overlap, but there is validity, or I wouldn't bring it up, of using this kind of description. In this case, you could look at the home base, the home office of the red circuit as like being from about the pelvis down. Well, for the night, I guess I should go ahead and say from the diaphragm down to get you to try and look where I was going. And here be from the neck, from the base of the skull, down taking care of the respiratory system. And the rest of it be up to wherever line level the general consciousness of humanity being. All of this is ad hoc, but it is representative of something quite correct and valid. First, let me start off with one of my musical, if not rhetorical, and beautiful questions. No matter who you are, no matter what your education, no matter how sophisticated you are, let me ask you this. Once gut level is taken care of, you've been fed, you had enough sleep last night, you're not in the throes of terminal horniness right now. From the gut level, you're fairly well fed, right? What else is there to life? What else? That's not the end of it. Of course, there's got to be something else, or what the hell are we doing here? Why am I dressed up here on the stage, and why are we all sitting here, and our arms folded, and you staring at me, and me staring at you? Why do we have electricity? Why do we have clothes? Why do we have paper for you to write notes? Why do we have the little TV camera? So, of course, I don't get excited. I was not fixing to say, well, there's nothing else. There obviously is something else, right? But, back to the question. Looked at another way. Looked at it a real, valid way. If you're satisfied from the gut level down, or up to the gut level, you're fed, you're not too cold right now, you're not too hot. If you needed sex in the last few hours, you had it. You're not thirsty. Just the gut. The red circuits. If right now they're fairly well satisfied, what else is there? Comma. There obviously is something else, right? But what connection does it have? What connection can you put in a quite physical, cellular manner? The rest of it, that people say they won't, that you say you won't, that your own circuits tell you that you won't. Do you need it? Is it necessary to have it to be alive? Is it necessary to have it to pass for being happy? If this is either sounding too complex or to some of you too simplistic, let me put an example on you. I will assume, don't tell me otherwise now, I don't want to get the blues. I'll assume that this will hold true for all of you, that you have on more than one occasion in your life engaged in sex that did not seem, I started to say, it did not seem that it could be improved upon. But there's really only, sex is one of the true binary things that it's either on or it's off. and so I shouldn't have to try and clarify how good it was. But what I was going to say is when you get through, some poet years ago, some ordinary poet back in the city, unless I'm making this up, Shakespeare or someone of his ilk, mused that perhaps the only time a man was completely sane was right after sex. What I was going to get at, when it has been just right for you, and you just fall back over on your back, which I assume women can do sometimes. I don't mean just go to sleep. Wait, trust me, a few seconds before that, but just fall back over. If I suddenly jumped out of the bushes and said, all right, now's the time, I can grant one wish to everybody, what would be your wish? That. Good, well, good. I was hoping that surely all of you, or most of you, would understand. It's simply this feeling that right then, if a genie did holler, okay, now's your chance, you got to answer though, you got a split second, tell me what wish do you want, you'd have to go. Of course, we all know that you can't spend the rest of your life laying in bed fucking. I don't guess. But here is what I'm trying to get you to take a look at. On a quite real level, do you see that there is room for a few people to actually look at the question as to what is it that life has done to man? What is it life is doing through man, with man now having circuits that are alive and activated that are above the gut level? Primarily this. Primarily the very things that you and everyone else correctly finds as being the definition, the singularity of man above animals. That if we had some psychologist or sociologist or, God forbid, a religiously inclined person here, they could take what I said and say, well, you're just talking about man down to the rooting level, man down to the barbaric level, and that's not us. Man has got to be civilized. Man has art. Man has the concept of love and charity, and man can be a philosopher. But the few people, I'm not talking the world, the few people, what is it that life is up to man that, your laughter gave it away, those of you who did laugh, that you can be as close to being satisfied, so close that, as I said, you would have to sit there and go, to think, what wish do you want right after sex when it's just right, and the genie jumps out and says, you got 2 seconds, and it's gone. You got to tell me, what's your wish right quick? And you'd never get it because, what could I want besides this? What is life up to, and what have you been doing that you take as being serious, you take as being inevitable, you take as being proper, which back in the city it is, but now we're trying to get you out of that, with your cooperation, of course. What is it that you as an organism, that you as a living creature, believe that you actually want that is above the gut level? Now, I can start answering for people in general. Well, I want to be respected. I want to be powerful. I want to be a success in my field. I want to be rich and famous. Think about it a second. How is that tied to being satisfied from the gut level down? Worse yet, everything that you can imagine, I'm using you as archetypical of humanity, anything that you can imagine, listen to me fast, do you really believe, once I put it to you this way, that if you had it, it would ever be as satisfying anywhere close as you can ever get from the gut level down, such as right after a good screw? I'm not here arguing with you or live or debating, but some of you should feel that. As I pointed out, many of you are old enough that you had to forget it, you had to ignore it, but many of you have caught a piece of some dream you had. When you were younger, you dreamed, well, if I could just become president of this company, if I could just become sales manager, or if I could just finally afford a brand new Cadillac one year. And sure as hell you did it. And how long did it last? It's not an attack on possessions. It's not an attack on the world. It's not an attack on working hard. But what is satisfying from the gut up in the same way from the gut down? What has ever satisfied you like a good screw? What has ever even been the same ball game as a good meal when you've been working hard and you're hungry? What's even in the same, not just ballpark, universe, is being able to sit down or lay down when you're tired as hell? What have you ever found in life comparable to those three things? Or if you're freezing to death, you know how hard it is to be cold? What would you give to get close to a heater right then? And if none of you understand that, then you've never been sufficiently cold. All of the dreams, from the gut up, from gut level up, all the dreams that humanity has are there for a specific reason. It's not that life individually, the humans individually, are in some way flawed, that they can't see better, they're not being tricked, and etc. But I am going to go ahead and tell you, not just on the basis of me asking these kind of pseudo questions, trying to get you to see some stuff on your own, but let me go ahead and just point out to you very quickly, and then you can worry about defending this or define the flaw in this, which that's part of your job right now. Of course, if you feel defensive when I say it, you got a bigger flaw to worry about to start with. But there is nothing of which you are conscious, anybody, that offers to a man or woman on this planet right now any satisfaction that equals that you can get at gut level. There is nothing that you can do in the city, there is nothing ordinarily available that you will ever do that will satisfy you in the same way as a good screw, a good meal, a good nap. Now, that's not the end of it. I'm not trying to give you the blues, because you should be able to sort of smell the validity of that. Nothing, 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 nothing. It's for other purposes. Part of it is this, I have already pointed out to you in certain ways, that all of the dreams from the gut level up are unobtainable. Because anything, any dream, any plan, any goal that you've got that can be specifically formulated, that you can actually dream, you can actually see you sitting in a new Cadillac. I mean, you can just see it. Or a new Corvette, new Ferrari, whatever. Just pick that example. You can see it. You see it. Not just that, but you see the ripple effect it'll have of how, if you were a man, that women will just be automatically drawn to it and they'll overlook the size of your nose. Your neighbors, your contemporaries will hate you and be envious. The whole schmear and milieu of what would be involved in you sitting there in this new Corvette. You can just see the way you'd look. The tilt of your head. Suddenly, seeing in the car your picture of you, you're at least 20 pounds lighter just by having the car. All of that, all of that. If you can specifically formulate such a dream, there is a physical law at work that is, it's not just misunderstood on the third level, it's not even recognized. And that is what I've told you, that you can never achieve any dream that you can specifically formulate. Never. Never, never, never. But now from the gut up, can you see again? At all, do you get glimpses of the masterstroke, of the beautiful arrangement of how life has things fixed up that you continue to try for what, constructively speaking, is impossible. That for something to succeed in the city, for things to continue to succeed, that is, to survive, to apparently thrive in the ordinary world, they've got to be failures, such as religion, psychiatry, everything. All of man's institutions have to fail. If they ever succeed, that's the end of them. They must be continual failures. And of course, they're not recognized as such. Your dreams, that is, the dreams of everyone from the gut up, have got to be unobtainable. That is, that people fail to achieve their dreams. If they did not, no one would dream. If they did not, no one would do anything other than look for a good meal, a nearby bed, and what time's the next fuck coming around. and that'd be it. And that obviously is not sufficient for life, or we would not be where we are. Could any of you ask yourself this, rather than me just talking about the needs of life? If I tried to grant you, or our discussion, my monologue, of a more specific view of this, could any of you see that, especially in our part of the world, that the rest of human activity is like a struggle against boredom? Because none of you, unless you are absolutely nuts, and I think there's none of you left here like that, they're absolutely. But none of you are suffering from the gut level down. That is, none of you are going hungry, none of you are living in the streets. So now you've got what amounts to the area of uncertainty, the area of less than total satisfaction, at least being available, is from the gut level up. Can any of you see from a certain view, this is just from one view, it's as valid as other views I could bring out, but looked at from a more individual view, that all of the rest of this, once you're fed, fucked, and tucked in, the rest of it is a struggle against boredom. Now, some of you are getting already past the point to realize I am not deriding, making fun, or criticizing life. Well, soon all of you can keep that in mind now. Then let me put it to you this way. How else can you explain not only the invention, but the survival of television? The truth is, the circuitry of man is such that he will do anything to keep from being bored. Let me be a little more specific, just a slight variation of this view. The nervous system is such that it must stay stimulated. The red circuit you do not have to worry about. Not as long as you feed it, not as long as you keep it within the temperature range that's necessary. It does not have to be stimulated. You do not in some way consciously, you do not in some way in a human sense, you don't have to remind yourself, I hadn't had sex in 7 months. I think I'll make a note of this. Or, wait a minute, it just came to my attention. I keep a notebook here. I just realized I haven't eaten since last Tuesday. When you get above the gut level, you're then dealing with what amounts to a conscious need to be stimulated. Now, at the very bottom line, I shouldn't have just singled out television, because there's one thing worse than television. Would you tell us what it is? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's your own goddamn daydreams. They make television look like works of art. I follow you people who laughed along when I said TV, and some of you internally, you tried to hide it, I guess, but internally some of you smugly went, boy, yeah. Oh, cheap, dull, mundane, routine. Listen, all you got to do before you start laughing at television, all you got to do is look at what's going on in here. Don't go pay an astrologer or a psychiatrist or a numerologist. It's right there. All you got to do is learn how to go faster than it does. And there it is. You don't need somebody. It's just unnatural. It's unnecessary. But at any rate, all you got to do is look in there and just start becoming aware of what goes on in here. Right now, let's don't worry about dreams at night. At least none of you people hadn't asked me that yet. Don't worry about that. All the time that you're standing up and out of bed, just start looking at that. Just become aware of that. And you'll feel embarrassed you ever laughed at TV. Once you get a glimpse of that, I mean, it'll make you see that, you know, Family Ties or Three's Company or something, you know, looks like Balzac or Shakespeare compared to this. Oh, all right. So I slipped in my little laugh, but you just need to see this is a form of constant stimulation. The nervous system has got to be stimulated for you to be a full human being, for you to be serving the highest possible purpose for life. And when nothing else is going on, you daydream. Because it's going on by and large all the time in the yellow circuit at any rate, even if you're apparently watching TV or reading a book. But if apparently the seemingly world out there does not seem to be stimulating you, then what? All you got to do is just glance off, and there it is. You just become more aware of this TV, of this radio that's going on all the time. You can't turn it off. People are wired up not to be bored. And this is just all by appearances, of course, for me to say that they will do almost anything to keep from being bored. They will work for a living. That is, they will continue in professions, in a job. As I start out, you notice how we're rolling around in different expanding circles around the same thing tonight. But people will stay with a kind of profession, a job, that you ask them, are you still being a bartender? Are you still a contractor? Are you still a bricklayer? And they say, yeah. God damn, I hate it. I'm fixing to go back to school. I'm fixing to change jobs, and et cetera. And you say, well, how long have you been doing this now? Well, 15 years, but something else about professions. Let me take a little sidestep and point out something else on a wider scale. Another part of human consciousness, all of man's institutions back in the city would have something to say about the apparent less than satisfying professional, vocational activities of most people, almost everybody. So just look into your own consciousness before I expand it any further than that. And it's very likely that you have a story as to why you're stuck where you are. Somebody's fault somewhere. That your parents wouldn't lend you the money to go to school. Or every time you told your father that you wanted to be a composer, he would holler, well, all musicians die hungry, and plus they're nuts, and they take drugs. And he used to take your little fingers every time you'd say, I want a piano. He'd take your fingers and put them down on a brick and stuff on them. So, or every time you tried to paint or you tried to design clothes and to show your mother or father, somebody would go, you're nuts, or you got no talent, whatever it was. Many of you have got voices in you right now that if I said, what job would you like to be doing? What would you like to be doing in your life? And you said, I'd like to be a painter, a composer, I'd like to be whatever. And I said, well, why aren't you doing it? There'd be a reason. Don't be defensive now. There would be a reason. Well, all right, I'll tell you why. And there would be a reason. This is the desire that is built in. This is one of the driving forces in man's consciousness to be able to produce a sentence with a period. That, all right, I would have been a doctor. That's all I ever wanted. That's all I dreamed about it. I read about it. I'd see all the movies about it. I'd try to play, doctor, the little girl next door, which is another story. But I was always very interested in that. And my father promised he'd put me through school. And his business got in a tight, back about 56, and the bank, those goddamn bankers, foreclosed on my father. Not only could I not go to med school after that, it broke him. He died a drunk. Goddamn banks. And instead of bank, you spell P-E-R-I-O-D. That it's somebody's fault somewhere. But now, again, notice the beautiful arrangement in life. Human consciousness, all of the institutions, and by that I mean such things as religion, philosophy, psychology, psychiatry, common wisdom, if you could see that as an organized institution. Well, in varying parts of the planet at any given time, if you could identify a set of beliefs, whether it be 5 or 10 or just a couple that seem to constitute the prevailing common wisdom, you could look upon that as an institution because it's a reflection of more than just several people. It's just a combination. It's like an unstated or an unorganized organization. It's like an unincorporated company. But at any rate, back to where I was going. You could look upon all the institutions, religion, psychiatry, advertising, if you can believe that, the military, governments. I guess the easiest to see right quick would be religions, psychiatry, right now. Can you see that ostensibly their purpose is to put a period somewhere? Of course, religion seems to give it a more straightforward shot. Any particular religion says, well, all right, you come here wanting answers, we got the damn answers, and they grab out their Veda Mecum, their Bible, the Quran, the Old Testament, and they wave it. Here's the answer. What's the question? Well, I want to know about so-and-so. Well, right here, let me find the page. And they read you something. And then they look at you like, well, next. No, that here is the answer. But what they're saying in the psychiatry, it's something else. Well, you say, why do I suffer? Well, it's because all people have unconscious conflicts within them brought about because of their particular environment and their kind of personal traumas. It is an attempt, ostensibly, to put a period, to give an answer, to finally, go somewhere that you can go to somebody, not just a person. That's not good enough for most people. That's why I said institution. Even if you go to a priest, it's not a priest. The man represents the church of God, the institution of God here on earth, and he's just kind of, salesman, a front man. But there's more to it. Or to go to a psychiatrist, it's not just one guy there in an expensive suit with a little goatee. It's the institution of psychiatry. It's not just one guy. It's this whole body of knowledge called psychiatry. That's what I mean by an institution. All the institutions, apparently, whether they can state it this way or not, are there to try and formulate a sentence, one sentence, that has a period. Like religion, let's take Christianity, at least the fundamental part. I guess they could say, well, all right, the sentence is this: God is love. Period. Next question. Do any of you begin to sense how far removed from that apparent field this is? But here, part of the trick, part of the misdirection again, that human consciousness from the gut level up, from individuals to the great institutions, to the churches, the philosophies, if you hear what I was saying, they are ostensibly there to produce at least one sentence with a period on it. And they fail. At least they fail you, or you wouldn't be sitting here. But they fail by and large with humanity. You got to begin to see that. In a real sense, they fail. If they succeeded, then everybody on this planet would be Catholic, and that'd be the end of it. Everybody on this planet would be, whatever psychiatry would still stoop to such a term as, cured. Everybody would be cured, and that's the end of it. There'd be no more psychiatry. They'd all be out of work. They could all retire. So you got to see that it's failure. It's a sign of success. But notice that all these institutions are attempting to put a period, to come up with one sentence at least that they can put a period to, and none of them can. They believe that they are. They believe they're close, or they believe they have, such as God is love. But it's not a period. There's only one place that you can even come close to getting a period, and that's here, in this kind of activity. And yet there is nothing that would even indicate that that's possible. The reason I bring this little piece up before we turn the tape over is the beauty of it. That which apparently is going on in life never happens and nobody notices it. And it's only such things as coming up with the answer, one sentence with a period. The only place that is even remotely possible is here. And if you ever run across anybody that knows what they're doing, they'll never tell you that that's the purpose of this. And if there is such a sentence, the person's never going to tell you that if there is a sentence, and I know it, I'd never tell it. It's just to try and give you a whole new idea of what justice is. From the last time we were talking, I mentioned to you what is really available that is fairly close to where you are now, that is not all that unusual, and I was referring to as 4D consciousness, of having a seamless consciousness of time And the picture I tried to get you to hold for a moment of a kind of cycloramic painting, the kind that you stand in the center of a building and at 360 degrees, there is a painting of something, the Battle of Waterloo. But in your case, it's your life as you have perceived it thus far. And there, it is seamless. It runs continuously. Now, what you're involved with when you're operating at the ordinary level of consciousness, line level consciousness, city consciousness, 3D consciousness, what that amounts to also, as I started just to mention last time, it amounts to a type of episodic consciousness. It is necessary in life when all you have got is ordinary awareness, as you are now, let us say. Were it not for the fact that yellow circuit consciousness operates episodically, nothing would make sense. You could not deal with life. You couldn't drive your car. You couldn't get up and leave right now. You couldn't get home. You couldn't deal with traffic lights. You couldn't start the car. You couldn't change gears. You couldn't find your coat. Episodic consciousness reflects itself. Not that once you begin to see it, it doesn't need any proof. But some of the things I've already mentioned, I'll just throw at you again. It represents and manifests itself in staring. They continue, you stare in episodes. You gesture in episodes. You feel episodically. You do not feel in any sort of continuum. But out of the many, many things, I could just stay on this forever. But many of the things I want to point out, or several of the things, everybody, or many of you still concerned about feelings and love and treating people. You feel episodically. You do not feel in any sort of continuum. But out of the many, many things, I could just stay on this forever. But many of the things I want to point out, or several of the things, everybody, or many of you still concerned about feelings and love and treating people. I want you to understand that no one, you or anyone else, no one could be mad at somebody else without episodic thinking. The old poetic idea that love's a hurting thing, all the way from Shakespeare to Merle Haggard, are the facts statistically, which is good enough for me, that whatever it is, at least in the United States, and it'd be the same worldwide, but the latest figures are something like 72% of all homicides take place amongst family members. Nobody seems to find that interesting at all. Any of you who are still worried about being mugged and killed by strangers, just remember this. If you're going to get plugged or stabbed, the 7 out of 10 chances are it's going to be somebody you're related to or married to. Where I was trying to take this for a moment, it's the whole thing about being in love with somebody, your sexual partner, or your mother or father. Different kind of love, but surely as deep, as meaningful, as human. But people that you say you love, you surely see this. Don't be defensive. Don't be blind. Don't be an idiot and waste my time and yours. Those people that you can be the most angry with are those same people. You just simply have got to see that. That is the way the chemistry of man is wired up. You can hate your husband or wife or your mother or father a lot deeper, a lot better, a lot cleaner, a lot more passionately than you can a stranger. I don't care if the stranger just ran into your new Ferrari. I don't care if a stranger just stood up and made fun of your profession or your religion. And you may get mad, but that's nothing. You should know that. That is nothing compared to coming in and find out that she didn't iron your shirts, or you coming in and find out he didn't fix supper when it was his turn. That's how people get killed. or siblings. Murder amongst siblings, and you find out it was over a 25-cent debt. And one brother stabbed another one. Just stabbed him, then walked off. Went and got a hamburger and came back and they arrested him. And he treats it, well, like you just didn't know that son of a bitch. All right. Here's the thing. You could not be mad at anyone were it not for episodic thinking, because you would have a continuing awareness that the person right now that I seem to be inflamed toward negatively, that right now the person I want to strangle, you would have this seamless view that 2 minutes ago, 2 hours ago, 2 days ago, but sometime there we laid in each other's arms. And it was as close to me being satisfied in life, or you think you'd look back over the picture, the painting, were it not for episodic thinking, if you had a seamless realization of your life, that is, of time as being the background of all this, the many times that there you are, a real macho guy to use a man, the times that you've turned over in bed in the morning and looked at her laying there asleep and almost cried, that you couldn't explain why, just, how happy, just how much she means. Or she just opened up her eye for a second and kind of winked and then went back to sleep, and a tear came in your eye. Hey, yet now you came in and goddamn supper's not ready. And you could slap the bitch. All right, the only reason you're laughing is because it's true. It's not funny. It's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's not because that you've got psychological problems. All you are is alive. All you are is alive and living in the city. Here's the thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Your consciousness would, what do you want me to call it? It would explode. You would die. You couldn't stand it. You could not be angry at somebody not fixing supper, not ironing your shirt. You couldn't be mad at anybody. You couldn't be mad at Mussolini. You could be mad at Stalin, at Pontius Pilate, at Pharaoh, at all those bad guys in history. You couldn't be mad at anybody's philosophy if you had a seamless, time-based consciousness, because you'd be aware of the fact that you have held absolutely opposing views, opposing feelings to what you have now. Now, that is a very crude description. I'm going to try to take you further, and if you're listening, we can't go much further right now, I'm afraid. It's not just in a literal sense, although it's true what I just said, that you could not be mad at your sexual partner for anything, not while simultaneously remembering just a few hours ago that you just looked at him or her and almost cried just for joy, that for no reason, that I'm so happy. I would die without you. What do you mean supper's not ready? You could not do both. You could not. Consciousness, to operate at that city level, must be episodic. It must be that you can stare and look off and there is no continual sense of time. That, all right, now that you mentioned, I guess there's been times that I was really happy to have her here. But hell, most of the time she's like this. Can't remember to do anything, always bugging me. Jesus, hard to leave her. You could not do that. You could not be conscious in that sense if you had non-episodic thinking. Now, where I said that was almost going to break down, I'll try to push a few of you a little further right quick, if you can follow this. What seems to be the whole area of cause and effect, the whole literal sense of how life seems to operate, as insane as it is in the city. That one thing seems to happen, you shoot the cue ball and it hits the 8 ball and the 8 ball moves. That's a good old thing. That one thing causes another. I'm not a doctor right now because my father went bankrupt. That's what caused me not to go to school. And what caused him to go bankrupt was those goddamn greedy bankers. That there is a literal sense of cause and effect. It requires episodic thinking. It requires a consciousness wherein that you do this continually. Of course, I'm doing that to represent the way consciousness ordinarily works. It chops up everything as being an isolated instance. If you had non-episodic thinking, then all of the ideas in the world about cause and effect, and in the city, at line level consciousness now, I'm not saying that you're incorrect. There is cause and effect. It has to be that way in the city. Nothing would work, again, if it were not for cause and effect, as it normally is perceived, just in a straight line of one thing causes another. Were it not for that, I'd give it to you again. You couldn't get up right now and get your coat and get to the car. If you did get the car, you couldn't get it cranked. If you did get cranked, you wouldn't know where you lived. If you asked somebody, if you show them your address on your driver's license and they told you how to get there, you couldn't get there. In the city, there has to be this dependence. There has to be this belief that one thing causes another. Morally, scientifically, intellectually, socially. If you had what amounts to 4D consciousness, if you were standing there in the midst of a cycloramic painting, it would actually be more than that. It would be like a 4-pi. It would be like you living. Does everybody understand what I was saying? It would be more like of you living in the middle of a sphere, and that everything is going in all possible directions. But at any rate, if you were living, if your consciousness was such, you would then understand that one thing does not cause another. Everything causes everything. Your father's financial position did not cause you to be as you are. Your mother's attitude toward you did not cause you to be like you are. But her mother's attitude toward her didn't cause her to be like she was. In the city, everything would just fall apart. But everybody has faith in the city. You have to, in your perception, that what I am seeing, now I may need a few more facts, but what I'm seeing, by and large, is the correct view. Because I see when somebody is acting improperly. I see when bad ideas infiltrate into our government or into the social order, and I see that one thing then sets off a chain of events, and it causes something else, and this causes that. But to do that, you got to go. To do that, you have got to have no sense, no consciousness of time. And that's what I'm saying even in your high school days. They point out to you by now, just ordinary in the city, that there is actually 4 dimensions. That time is the 4th one. And you wrote that down when you had a little test. People go, yeah, that's true, that's true. There is no continual awareness of it. Time, in a sense, or life, in a sense, is always just ahead of itself. That it is now an accepted fact among civilized people. They just repeat it, that, all right, there is 4 dimensions. There's not just the 3 in which we live, you know, the physical height, depth, and width. There is actually the 4th one. That is part now of, at least in the sophisticated, our part of the world. Most of the world now, that's an accepted fact, but it is not a part of consciousness. It's always behind. That you can say that now human consciousness as a whole concedes that we live in 4 dimensions. But that consciousness itself, the 4th dimension, now operates like the envelope. It operates like the medium. It acts like the container for the other 3. And so man is to the point that he can say, well, I'm sure. It can be explained to me. I see that life is the 4th dimension. I see that we're living in 4 dimensions. I can see that time works because I see I'm getting older. I see that my children are growing up. I see that older people than me are dying. So, all right, I agree. There are 4 dimensions, there's no doubt. And that's the end of it. It is not the continual awareness. There is no continual awareness of time. There's a continual awareness of all the other dimensions. You don't walk up to somebody and say, you used to be 2 feet tall, now you're 6 feet tall. Or you don't look around at things in a building one day seems to be 100 feet long, and the next day it's 50 feet long. Or you don't get up in the morning, look around your room, and suddenly, instead of it being 10 by 20, it's 10 by 470. There's another interesting part. Attempting to do this, I want to point out to you that memory, ordinary yellow circuit memory, its episodic recollections of your life is the absolute mother's milk of stagnation and the status quo. That is the only way that you can remember anything. That if any of you having any trouble wrestling with what I've been saying thus far, then look at memory. Just as it is. Just your daydreams wandering back, or you hear a word, or see a photograph, or something that reminds you of your mother, or your childhood, or your days in college, or your first wife, or your third husband. Memory only, it's just obvious you should see it, can operate episodically. It's exactly like a movie, exactly like a TV show, as it must be. That is, that the name of the movie, whatever it is, Midnight Cowboy or The Fall of Napoleon. They run the credits if they run it first, and the movie starts. And it says, 1794, just outside Paris. And you settle down, you get your popcorn, and the story starts. But the story didn't start there. Well, they run the credits, and it's Fatal Attraction. I don't know how it started. I didn't see it, but it says, somewhere in Manhattan yesterday. And so, all right, you settle down, now you got it. And the story starts, and here comes the character. But it didn't start there. Well, that's the way, of course, it must be. And at the end of the movie, at the end of the 30 minutes or the hour on TV, the whole thing gets wrapped up, and they run the final credits. It's the end. The lights come on the theater. That is episodic consciousness. And it seems to be quite agreeable. You've never been in a theater, and it comes on, and they run the credits, and it's the life of Napoleon. They get through the credits, and here's this beautiful long shot of Paris, where they've doctored up some, where it looks like maybe Paris 200 years ago, and it says, somewhere outside of Paris, 1715. You've never been in a theater and somebody stops and say, wait a minute, my good man, who's running this? Oh, what happened before this? I've been cheated. Somewhere around. That's not it. That fits episodic consciousness. But notice, in the city, it's got to be that way. That's why that seems funny. How can it be otherwise? What am I saying? They're going to have to go back and try and figure out the very first time that man became man, and they're going to have to run the whole fucking history of everybody just to get up there. It'd take how many years? You'd be dead if you stayed there in the movie house and lived there. And they kept showing this movie, and all you want to do is you paid your money, you want to find out about the life of Napoleon. 10 years later, you're sitting there, and they're up to the 1100s, and you think, good. The memory of your life. We don't have to worry about movies. Now look at the memory. Ordinary memories, recollections, is absolutely episodic. That's the only way you can remember when your mother mistreated you, or the time your father did the worst thing, or the time your father died. It is an episode that I remember where I was, and I got a phone call. And they said, go over to the captain's office. There's a phone call. And I couldn't imagine what. And I walked in, and he said, Corporal so-and-so, your father died. You remember when you were laying there, if it hadn't been for that, you wouldn't remember it, but you remember that a guy walked in on the weekend, you were still on base, and a guy walked in and said, you got a phone call, which would never have been nothing, usually going down the payphone. And he said, they want you at the captain's office about the call. That's the only reason you remember it. But it's an episode. As though this whole thing happened right when you were laying there, and the guy said, hey, Fred, you got a phone call, but they want you over at the captain's office about the call. That is the only way that ordinary memory can operate. But my little sting of that term from the political realm, if you didn't catch it, it's not important, but I said was the mother's milk. I think some politician, that was in reference to patronage, if not outright bribery. But anyway, the episodic recollection of ordinary memory is the mother's milk. It is the foundation of stagnation. It is the foundation of the status quo being held together. And by the status quo, I don't mean just the institutions in the city, I mean you. Your memory is episodic. It is as though you're looking at just short time frames out of a movie, just a few frames. But I'm not going to stay with this anymore, I'm just going to tell you one more time, it absolutely is part of the glue that keeps you as you are, you and everyone else. Because you can continue to, as you should in the city of course, be able to have these episodic episodes run over and over and over, and they never change. They do not expand. You do not ever ask, well, wait a minute, how come I just remember when my father did so-and-so to me? How come I can't back it up 2 hours before? Well, I remember when I walked in that day and I said, supper's not ready? And I was prepared to be mad or upset. And she said, no, it's not. And by the way, goodbye. And I looked down, she had a bag and she left. And your feeling is, that's all you remember. That's the episode. And you can't back it up. You don't have a time-based consciousness to back it up. an hour before, a day before, 2 weeks before. Ordinary consciousness is not built that way. It would collapse if it was forced into it. Everything would become just a blur. Do you hear me at all? I'm dealing with an ACB. This is not something that's going to happen in the city. But if you took consciousness as it is, and I in some way could stick my little hand in your ear, or get into your brain, and I could wipe out this episodic consciousness to where you had a continuous, non-stop awareness of time as the background to all of this, that is, to all of your life. If I could do that, do you understand that your brain, your consciousness, your awareness would turn into mush? It would just all run together like a watercolor that you'd turn the hose on. You'd be nuts. You couldn't do anything. You'd be mobile. You would be back to truly gut level. That'd be you. This up here, as I said, it's impossible, but if I got to carry it any further and apparently put a period here on it, it's as though that whole thing would just shut down. It would be like it would go to you. Bye. And that'd be it. Well, I'm going to leave that for tonight, but I didn't bring it up in any negative way. I'll leave it to you for the time being on the sense of what I was pointing out. You could not be mad at anyone. You would have no faith any longer. There would be no basis for you believing that anything in life caused anything else. Because you would no longer be using this on the basis of some flawed information. If you saw a non-stop, seamless time as the background of everything that seems to happen in your life, you could no longer be mad. No theory. You wouldn't be having to control yourself. So you couldn't be mad. You just couldn't. You couldn't be critical. You just couldn't. I mean, if you sit down and tried, this is another act, but you wouldn't, but if you sit down and tried, you'd get a cerebral hernia. You couldn't do it. But also, your belief that you know how things work, even though they're not working right, but your belief that one thing causes another, it'd be gone. You would be then in the midst of what I've been describing as a method, like the outcome of a particular method of, oh, that's what you'd be left with. I want to hit a few of, before I read the actual questions, some other things that have come up from you people's writing. Somebody asked about positive thinking. And I know that I stood here a few nights ago and I said that I was the only person that you would ever meet that didn't in any way whatsoever, did you say in any way whatsoever? Yes, I did. Any way whatsoever, found any complaint with life. And somebody asked, I'm paraphrasing the question, I didn't bring it. It was on the basis about, well, is this isn't that not much more than the power of positive thinking, or that old kind of attempt, which some of you may be a little young, but that surfaces in the life of man in the city, every 40 or 50 years under another guise. But the power of positive thinking. And the answer, of course, is, believe it or not, 34. No. I had the wrong question. The answer in this case is no. On this basis, the reason I'm just, another short one, I'm going to hit a few of these shortly, quickly. What seems to be what ordinary people in the city call the power of positive thinking, under whatever guise, but I assume you know what I'm talking about. It pops up in psychology and pops up in religious guises, spiritual guises, rather secular attempts at self-improvement, Dale Carnegie, that sort of thing. The power of positive thinking as it comes out in the city is merely a mechanical reaction to negative perceptions. And this is far beyond that. This is not a mechanical reaction to anything. It is a new form of action. It is an unnatural form of action. It is, by and large, an unnecessary form of action. But to think that this is in some way an attempt to be a part of a positive thinking organization is to completely miss the point. To try and be, if you were let's take it another way. If I said, all right, it is a piece of that, I can use that. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I want all you people to understand that it doesn't do you any real good to be mad in life. You know, to go around pissed off and hostile, it's not going to get you anywhere. So here's what you should do. You should try to put a little smile on your bill, on your face. Try to be cheerful, and try and speak up in a positive way. Compliment people, all that thing. If I did that, me or anyone, can you begin to try and take into a constant consideration, at least, the binary nature, that if that were what we were attempting to do, what I was talking about, the tacit message equally is that there sure is a lot to be non-positive about, or else we would not be attempting to be positive. In other words, there is a lot, to say the least, of things to be mad and pissed off about, or else there'd be no need to try and be positive. That is not what this is about, because I went ahead and just spilled the beans. I told you there's nothing broke, nothing is going on wrong, and that you can't do this and be mad. Or conversely, if you're feeling critical, if you're out of sorts, or even if you're in sorts, at that particular moment, you're not doing this. You're back with a hoi polloi. You're back being a stooge and a dupe in middle class, and you're part of the great bourgeoisie. You're back in the city, and you're just as common as you can be. You're back in the hands of binary consciousness. But it is not positive thinking. All such attempts, and I can now throw in right quick, I can throw in every institution, all religions, any would-be attempt at self-improvement, all fits into this. They're all a reaction to something. Why would somebody try and be a good Jew or a Muslim or Buddhist? Because there are things out there that are un-Buddhist-like, that are un-Allah-like, they're un-Jewish-like, and so we should struggle against them. That's the same thing. This is not a reaction to anything. Any of you that begin to get a glimpse of that, that's like a jump it's like a quantum jump. Then we can really speed up. But this is not a reaction to anything. Nothing. Nothing. Nothing you can perceive. I'm not a reaction to it. What I'm talking about is not a reaction to it. If you belong in this, you are not a reaction to something. It starts off and it feels that way. That's why I'm trying to soften you up and hit you in the back of the neck and beat on you about the chest area and get you up close in the clinch. Just kind of wear you out. Because you feel like it is a reaction. You feel like that you're here, if you're here for any reason, that you're here, so that you'll be a better person. That is, a better person compared to blank. That is, compared to what I am now. This is not a reaction. There's nothing wrong. You've got no choice in the beginning. If I insisted, well, tell me why you think you're here, what you would come up with would be a reaction. No matter how positively you put it in words, all you'd be describing is that I am reacting to that which I seem, or which I apparently disapprove of in me, in life. And the sad truth is, this is not a reaction to any of that. That's why it's useless. I don't say, I know I've said that several times, that's not to give any of you people the real, or a new level of being disappointed or pessimistic when I say it's useless. So what? That's not a negative comment for me to say it's useless. But it might do you well to try and remember, just verbally for the time being, that this is not a reaction to anything. Nothing. That's why it is so clear, stable, straightforward. It's like trying to play handball and the wall is infinity. You feel sure you gave it a good shot, but based upon the city concept of time, it seems like after that last shot you gave it, you've been here for what? 2 days, 2 hours, 4 years. And you just know it's got to come back. A few of the things that I also have mentioned, I want to tie to some of this. These little favors I gave out concerning some of your fairly low-level habits: food, booze, alcohol, exercise. And me saying it's not magic, and me also trying to point out to you that there's a certain kind of balance. It must be activated. It's not really obtained, because you have got to be, as I said, you've got to be about that close to being as healthy as you can, believe it or not, to actually be properly attracted here, believe it or not. And then I still point out that none of this, the numbers, exercise, changing your diet at all, giving up booze, is not going to be some sort of instant red circuit magic. But it is like this. Those of you that know anything about construction work, it's like you have got to, for minimal health, to be like the subflooring in a house. That you've got to have that. And you had to have it genetically before you got here. I can't cure you being lame. I can't cure you being lame. I don't mean just in a physical leg, but if your wiring system, if you were born a second, does everybody know what that is? Or you country people, if you were born a cull? No, I can't help that. Or if I could, it's more trouble than it's worth. I know it wouldn't be to you, but it's just more trouble than it's worth. That can't be cured. So there has to be this already almost subflooring in your structure of minimal health. But now for people involved with this, once you reach that point, minimal health is not enough. What you're really after is you want to put carpet down. You're wanting a parquet floor. Ordinary people in the city, that is you at the ordinary level, all you want to do is get well. For a revolutionist, getting well is nothing. Getting well is something that they did 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months after they met me. They found out what being well was. They found out what I meant by my old crude statement about once you're well, fuck health. It's not a hobby. There's nothing to talk about, nothing to read about. So you've got to find out if you've got a stable subflooring. And you've also, if you're dealing with obvious, blatant dragging of your foot or unwieldy objects across the floor, that is, if you're doing something like overeating, if you're doing something that you know is affecting what should be the minimal threshold, the minimal subflooring of health, you simply stop it. And that is not just physical activities such as eating 4 pizzas every night or overeating, period. It's not just that. It would be if you are in a situation that seems to be above the red circuit, like a romance, and they're playing your favorite country song all throughout your life, every episode, and the song is, love is a hurting thing. Well, I know he must love me because he beat the shit out of me again. Or I know she must love me because she ran off and left me again. You are in a dance like everyone else. You are in a, by dance, remember right now I'm referring to you people specifically, that every relationship, somebody is dominant and somebody is submissive. You are in one that is unprofitable to you. In the city, it doesn't matter. If you're going to stay here, you have got to quit doing things. In the city, it doesn't matter if you overeat. In the city, it doesn't matter if you drink a quart of booze a day. In the city, it doesn't matter if you're living with a man that beats you up, and the one before that beat you up, and your first husband beat you up. It doesn't matter. You think it does, and that's not my problem. But here, if you're hurting yourself, if you're doing anything and it's going to fit right in there, just those little bits. If I don't mention it to you yet, if it's something that you're doing, you got to stop it. We're not talking about a long-range project. We're not talking about that you need to go into analysis, or you think I'm going to put you into some kind of special analysis with me, and I'm going to in some way get to the root of your problem as to why you end up with men that beat you up. There's nowhere to go with it. There's nothing to look for except the door. Or why is it you overeat? There is no why. You got to deal with the real time. If you're doing something now that keeps you from establishing, from being in touch with the subflooring of minimal health, you got to stop it. You got to stop it now, not tomorrow. And you can't stop it yesterday, of course. That is, of wondering, why did I get like this? What is the linear sequence? What caused me to do this? Since all of you seem to enjoy the term fuck health so much, another one is fuck cause. There is no cause. None. None. That's why nobody can find it. But that's too obvious, isn't it? I mean, who am I to make fun of and criticize life? I mean, after all, they've only had, that we know of, about 6,000 years that nobody can find that one thing will cause another. They can't even find that. So I should bite my tongue. I mean, it just never struck anybody if they can't find the cause because there is none. I am going to wish you all sayonara and turn off the tape for an epilogue. Is that okay by me? I had people already ask about us doing dancing. That's all right. Just come around when you get it. We'll take that up shortly. We'll do the best here. It's been a while since we did, and I got the drums. I understand that the times the Paradigm people did it with you, you had fun. So I assure you that will be equal fun if I drag them in and I'll lead it off. And I think that I'm going to start dragging in some Kairoutes, some of the ones from the past, from the recent past, and start having them read for your edification. I thought I'd give it a few more meetings because some of you are already showing signs of that you would be astounded to hear some of you wouldn't know whether to laugh or to try to leave the room. And we will, I'm not going to do it and waste anyone's time and effort down here, but if enough of you are now interested, we will start back from the general area that I'm going to pick out from last year. We will start on some off night, Tuesday if it's appropriate, or Wednesday, to show tapes down here if any of you want to come down here. Of course, any of you who are real enlistees to this, you should want to, but right now I'm not going to push it, and I'm not going to be either disappointed or otherwise, but I am not going to have somebody down here running these tapes for one or two people to show up. But if enough of you want to, would you be in charge of put up a list on the bulletin board, let's say, right now when we get through, and just stick up your name or initials, that if you would come here on another night to see a tape of one of these meetings from last year. If not, for the time being, we will ignore that, but some of you had already asked. To you other cities, I want to point out to you people out there who are still faithfully attempting to pursue the directive I told you of the public activities you're doing. I want to remind you, since I haven't done it lately, all of you people actually in the groups in the other cities, is not to let any of that distract you from the actual purpose of you being involved with this, that is your own good. Don't ever let apparently you doing that which I said was necessary insofar as public activities, don't let that become the apparent reason for your existence. Don't let that become the apparent purpose of the group in your city, because those of you who hear this know it's not. Just do not let it get to be such a specific activity that you begin to ignore your own welfare. And you people in other cities, you can do what you want to with this. I was going to say a few more words to the newer people here in Atlanta. So you can use this as you've done in the past. I'll leave it up to you. A few more little things that obviously should clarify, and a few new ones. And I said don't talk about this to people now, or to me. Also this, do not in some way, verbally or tacitly, do not attempt now to make it mysterious. That is, if you've got acquaintances, somebody you know that knew that you were coming down here, somebody came down here for some public things, when I tell you not to talk about it now, is don't fall into this. They say, are you still fooling around with those people down there? And you go, and you start playing that kind of stuff. Or who did it turn out was in charge? I didn't stick around. Oh, I can't talk about him. I can't tell you his name. Or, no, I can't tell you why he looks. No. No, we're forbidden. It's some kind of, they'll kill me or I'll die. Do not make this in some way turn into some kind of mysterious something to somebody else. You should already immediately, since a lot of you laugh, you understand you don't have to talk about things you don't want to. If you do, I have grave reservations whether you'll ever get out of the city. If somebody, an ordinary person, I don't care who it is, asks you a direct question, you don't have to answer that question. But you don't have to be weird about it. If nothing else, you do this. You say, why do you ask? To give yourself time to think a minute, because nobody can stand that question. Nobody. Well, let me make sure you understand that now. It can't be a mechanical reaction. That is, it can't be hostile or sarcastic. But nobody in the city, part of life's body, this is a piece of the excursion I gave you Monday night. But nobody, your mother, your father, your best friend, Cardinal Fang of the Inquisition, the Pope, a policeman, nobody can withstand that if you can do it non-hostilely. For somebody, they can ask you any question. I don't care, the most personal question, the most pressing question, and if all you got to do is say, well, why do you ask? And then whatever their next question is, if you still can't come to any better conclusion, when they do that one, you say, well, why do you want to know that? And all it will take is just a few of those, and I'm not telling you to do that because you got to know what you're doing, because this one sometimes could get you into a gut level tete-a-tete. That is, you can have people ready to, if not climb the wall, to climb your wall. Maybe someday I'll give you that as an excursion, but you'll find out if some of you think you already hear it. Nobody can stand that. Life is not arranged for that. But at any rate, you can always do that to start with. But then after that, all you got to do is turn the questions and the apparent attention of you and them together back on them. Because you do not have to answer questions. You do not. And I'll tell you more if you need tricks. But just remember that. You don't have to answer a question. All you got to do is turn it back on the people. You start trying to talk about them, and everybody in the world, everybody, the smartest people in the world, psychologists, philosophers, they'll all fall for it, without exception. Nobody's immune. Nobody. All you got to do is start interviewing them, and they can start off saying, I've heard some terrible things about you. I've had terrible dreams. Wait till you hear what I've been hearing about you. You say, well, I want to hear it, but Jesus, where have you been? I have missed you. What you been up to? And I say, oh, well, that's the end of it. Well, I did get a promotion. Well, tell me about it. And that's the end of it. At any rate, do not do that. And there's a whole handful of questions. If I don't get them all, I'll pick them back up next time that had to do with the favors. One of them was exercise. If any of you people are actually working real hard physical labor, a full-time profession of ditch digging, bricklaying, that sort of thing. If any of you are, then you can consider that your exercise can be limited down to like 30 minutes a day instead of an hour. But what I want you to do, the reason I say that, and it doesn't have to be that hard, but get out, I want you to do something solitarily. Because if you are in that kind of job, you're around red circuit people. You're out there working on some kind of crew. And so what I want you to do is at least get 30 minutes that afternoon once you eat or before you go to bed, is I want you to get out by yourself. And if you've had 8 hours of good hard work, then it's not just the literal physical exercise, but I want you to get out and just take a leisurely walk, but off by your damn self. And some of you ask about other things, about Tai Chi or Kung Fu and etc. If you're doing something like that and you seem to enjoy it, that's a substitute. That's fine. But if you're doing that, all my knowledge of it, you're not doing it 5 or 6 days a week. And so the other days, I want you to do something. The other days, I want you to go out and jog or walk. But that is, the 6 days, other exercises, quite all right. But I want 6 days a week for you to get an hour's worth of something in addition to the numbers. And I had, as far as food, somebody or several people ask about eggs. Since I said no, you got to be reasonable. It's almost impossible to get away from eggs if you eat anything. You know, donuts, cake, you know, all the stuff that God intended us to eat, you're going to have to eat some eggs. But along that line, other things, some more that I give you as a strong suggestion, I'll leave it to you for the time being, is to give up eating just eggs, just omelets and fried eggs. And I would suggest also, if you can, it's just a suggestion, that you abandon milk. That's just, it's not do or die, and I've never made anybody stop that, but since some of you have already asked, I suggest to you most strongly that you'd feel better. Not miracles, and don't wait for suddenly you start having visions of Buddha to say, good boy, good boy. I just suggest to you that you'd feel better. If you doubt it, look at who drinks milk, but never mind. And it wasn't just a question, but several other things that I did not say, but I want you to do that everybody can do. The worst part's over. I'm not fixing to say give up sex. But here's a couple that I want to make clear. I want you to stop staring from now on. Just do not stare. You got no business staring. It's just a manifestation that is tied into the circuitry of the city. I'm not going to tell you more. I've already been talking about it. But don't stare. Just don't do it anytime. I don't care if you're sitting around by yourself in a traffic jam out on the interstate. Don't stare. I don't care what you do. I don't care where you look, but do not stare. And another one is this from now on. This is constant. Is do not turn your thumbs in. Well, of course, unless you're holding a hammer. Or engaged in some erotic activity or something important. The rest of the time, do not turn in your thumb. Don't do anything resembling a fist, but just don't even do that. Do it. Don't do it. There's a reason for it. And nobody's asked me this, but I want, since it came to mind, if any of you in here hunt or fish, you stop it. I don't allow that. And as long as I'm there, you should, I'm telling you this is not a suggestion. Do not unnecessarily kill things. Now, this is no way religious, this is not moralistic, and I'm not a secret Hindu, because we're killing things constantly. Every time you walk the ground, you're killing things. Every time you breathe, you're killing things. The sweat of your body is killing things. The sweat of your body sometimes almost kills me. But it's this, I'm telling you, really, seriously. You know, if you turn around the house and there's a wasp or a bee in the house, don't turn around and just kill it. Grab a cup or something and catch it and put it outside. If you do not absolutely have to kill something, do not do it. Don't walk along, don't be killing plants. Don't be walking along breaking off flowers. Don't be out jogging and run past a tree and break off the end of a limb to pick your teeth. Don't do it. I'm telling you. It's not going to change life. Life does not notice that. But you've got no business doing this and at the same time making life work any harder. By you not killing some bee, by you not stepping on an ant, is not going to noticeably relieve life of some additional effort. Me or you, either one. So I tell you that. You're not making the gods happy. You're not making some secret religious organization happy or something. But nobody doing this. Someday you would come to this conclusion yourself. You'd understand you got no business whatsoever making life work any harder than it has to. You should not be wasting resources. And anything that's alive is a resource. You got no business stepping on an ant when you don't have to. No, that is not to say let your house get overrun with rats and roaches. You know I don't mean that. Sometimes you got to. Sometimes there may be no other way. But I'm telling you that there are many times people in life kill everything from trees and flowers and the end of a branch to insects that they did not have to do it. In the city it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But here it matters. It matters for you to do this. It's just another instance. If you do such as that, you are running in a contrary course to what this is about. Don't waste resources. Don't make life in that one little way. Work any harder than it has to. It's got to replace another bee. It's got to make that little limb grow back. And all you did was go by and just break it off, and it's no big deal. It doesn't matter. Right. That's why it matters. All right. The excursion. Now listen to me. When I give these, I mean them specifically. If you got to, make a note. That is a continuing difficulty, even when people have been here, of me telling somebody something, and it was for a specific reason. And sometimes people have to go through this several times to realize that there was some reason that I said it exactly as I did. The reason is not simply because I'm right, it's because I know what is the most efficient. I know what the purpose of the excursion is, even though I'm going to tell you less and less as far as there being any purpose. But here's this one. And you new people, I want you to do this with somebody else. If you know somebody else out of the group, now take them, I want somebody in the group, is what I mean, not a stranger. So either somebody, one of the other new people here, or one of the old people. Ask around and somebody will agree to do it for you. And for you older people, I'm telling you, agree. Little joke, they would have agreed. Here it is, sometime between now and Tuesday, which is the next time we meet, here's what you do. Get yourself a clipboard and make up a name. I didn't do this for you. But make up names such as the American Psychological Resource Foundation. That sounded good. Go out to a shopping mall. And be reasonable. Don't go right in front of if they got a detective standing there, for them to start harassing you or tell you to get out, or go out in a parking lot. But get somewhere. If you can go inside a closed thing, there doesn't seem to be anybody around. But don't let people bug you when you're doing these things. Don't just go in and ask for it. Don't walk right in and pull this one when there's a cop standing there. When you should know, you got to know that there's every chance in the world before you start doing this, he's going to come over and say, who are you, and that kind of thing. Don't do that anymore. Don't be in a position where ordinary people can come up and make you defend yourself. It's bad. It's worse than drinking. It's a lot worse than hamburgers. It's almost as bad as the worst drugs you could take. I'm telling you, don't do things to where you have got to defend yourself to anybody else. It's serious business. It's not psychological. It's chemical. So here it is. You're going to act like you're doing a poll. Have your clipboard, and I want you to do this with 18 people at one time. Now just stay there until 30 or 40 minutes, whatever it takes. And you say, pardon me, say, I'm with the American, what I call it, Psychological Resource Foundation. And we just got I'm taking a poll, it's just one question, okay? It won't take but a second, just one question. Now have your pen. And here's a question. You say, do you think it is the lack of morality or the lack of education that is contemporary man's biggest problem? Am I to take it that you people I see not writing this down have a photographic memory? Do you? Huh? Can you repeat what I just said? Okay. I take your word for it. That's what you asked them. And now several variations of that. 18 people. Now one variation is every fifth person you ask, whatever answer they give you, I want you to do this in a non-threatening manner, and a non-hostile manner. And you feel like you're making some kind of check of their answer. But when they tell you the answer, every fifth person out of the 18, when they answer, well, I think it's morality, I want you to look down like you're going to write, and then look up and say, are you serious? Whatever it is they answer. Do not do it hostilely. Listen to me. Don't do it as a smart aleck. Do it as though, of course, what you're inferring to them is they're the first person that said that. Or you say, are you serious? And then right quick, let them off the hook. But just say, are you serious? And give it a second, and then go, like, oh, I'm sorry. And then check it and say, well, thank you. Thank you. But look them right now for a second and say, are you serious? That's one. Another one is this. When you see somebody walking and you decide, I'm going to try to get that person next, and here they come, I want you to just look. Try not to stare now. Try to use the kind of look around, not staring method to look at the person, and here they come, they're walking and doing what. And I want you to look, and I want you to personally try to guess which one they're going to say. I say guess. You see them come walking. I say walking. It'll be their dress, the way they're holding their head. You may hear them talk, but just here comes this guy. You're going to try to get him next. And just see if you've got a feel that he's going to either pick lack of morality or lack of education. And try, if it becomes that interesting on this aspect, try and keep a running little record in your head of how often you're correct. But then do not ask yourself why you knew that. Don't ask what the cause was of you being correct or incorrect. Just do it. And from now on, until further notice, all these excursions, something to go out and do specifically, I want you to turn in a little piece of paper and just be a little scrap instead of one of these yellow pages. From now on, every night, I want you to just simply turn in a note and it says done with your name on it. That's just for a little while, since I don't trust any of you bastards. That was an endearing use of the term, sort of. But at any rate, I still say I don't trust any of you. And I hate to lie to you, I told you I was going to get some of the questions. But one of the questions has to do with why I was about to stop. And here's the question. Obviously, you wait and see, a bunch of you are going to like this question that somebody just sent before I walked out here. Why am I so tired? At first coming to these meetings, it was like I would leave with so much energy I could barely go to sleep. He didn't say specifically, but I would also assume they might have been just referring to the public side. But at any rate, I'll assume, without any doubt, that they're referring now to these meetings of now me and you. For a while I could not even go to sleep. I'd be so full of energy. And once I did go to sleep, I'd wake up the next day still full of energy. Now it seems as though I have no energy at all underlined. What do I have to say about this is what they're asking. Is it that my consciousness has changed? Is it my lack of iron or what? I hope, well, I'll assume. I won't assume. I'll tell you, there is no doubt. I could look out the first night, I've been through this, that some of you, it was just almost as though the first night I walked out here and started talking, within 5 or 10 minutes, a lot of you were feeling as though somebody had been beating on you. Just let it run out. That you just absolutely felt that you had been beaten upon. That you were all excited, waiting to see who I was, and you thought it was some great mystery, and I come out in about 5 minutes. A whole lot of you were just on the verge of you about to pass out. It's a good thing I don't take that personally for a while, isn't it? I could respond from several positions, but I'm going to pick out the most immediate one that you might be able to start dealing with. Well, first off, is let you know I am aware of that. There's nothing unusual. But here's one way for you to try and begin to neuralize, to try and stretch your ordinary awareness as to why this seems to be draining you, those of you that does seem to be doing such. At the very basic level, what is going on is a heretofore unactivated resistance to this, because you've never been confronted with it. That, at the most basic physical level, is it. Some people, as you notice, that stayed here for 2 or 3 days when we first started and seemed to be Maybe you knew some of them for all I know. Some of the ones that are now gone. They stayed here and took notes and seemed to be right here on time. But it was like after 2 or 3 or 4 or a half dozen nights, it was like suddenly they could not bring themselves. It was almost physical. I can assure you that some of them, there came time that they knew they had to get up and get in their car and go over here to be on time. And it was like, well, I just can't move. I got no more energy to do this. I couldn't leave the house. Maybe I'll call next week. But right now I couldn't even get on the phone. It's as though they're just absolutely whipped by all of this. You could also look at it this way, right quick. If somebody's stumbling here by accident, sort of, then they could do what I have pointed out. They could, correctly from their view, look at this as being absolutely insane. That none of this computes, or some of this, it starts out all right, or it sounds like that what you're talking about might make sense, and then, Jesus Christ, I don't know what you do with it. And it's so nuts. But that's what makes me tired. It just drives me crazy. You should, if that happened to somebody, if that's happening to you now, I got nothing to say. Nature's going to take its course. But those of you hearing pieces of this, because all of you got some little piece of this, or you couldn't hear it at all, is you should find it curious. That why is it that I am so, at times, exhausted by this? So there's your obvious binary possibilities. Well, one is it is so insane, it is so irrational, it is so improbable that it just wears you out. It makes your head tired to try and follow it. All right, if that's it, then, goodbye. Fine. You're right. I don't disagree at all. In fact, if you want it this way, I'll have the last word. I told you so. How's that? But assuming that's not the case with any or all of you, then try and consider what I pointed out. You have never in your life been confronted with this. And there is now a brand new, a heretofore unactivated resistance. You are now struggling against something that you didn't even know anybody ever had to struggle against. And from one view, in certain ways, and it doesn't have to be this way all the time, even right now. It may come and go with some of you, or some of you may find that it seems to be continuing right now. But it is like you're fighting something that you never had to fight before. There's nothing unusual. As far as giving you a magic pill right now to get over it, I have none to give you. Or if I have one, I'm not going to give it to you. There's nothing unusual. Everything is a tempo. Everything is on course for you to feel that way. The only thing I can tell you, it is very short-lived. Well, here's your choice. It's either short-lived or you'll get so tired you can't come back, and so that takes care of that. But if you do come back, this is not a continuing, surely you can sense that.